Welcome back to Champion News Talk Radio, brought to you by championnews.net. This is Carol Parisi. Today, our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have Dr. Arie Friedman with us, who is the Republican candidate for Senate District 29, just after we get petitions signed for you to get you on the ballot, Dr. Friedman. We were talking about what needs to be done in Illinois on the break, and clearly there's a lot of problems in Springfield.
Sure.
And what are some of your, what are the problems that, as you see them, and what are some of your solutions?
Look, the overwhelming problem in Illinois is simply that the economy is atrocious. We have 9.5% unemployment, and it's rising. It's higher than the national average. And everybody here knows that the reason we're doing badly is because of political policies from Springfield. What are those policies? I mean, they're absolutely the opposite of what you would need for job creation. We have a business hostile environment. CEO Magazine recently rated Illinois the 48th worst state to do business in. Now, we hear all the time that the Democratic Party has said, well, it's not as bad as the Republicans portray it. A lot of our policies are good, and they have a nuanced view of some of their policies. But the end result of it all is clear when you have CEOs saying they don't want to come here. And businesses here saying they're not going to stay unless they get some sort of special break.
Well, we've lost a lot of businesses
already
over the past year.
Particularly to Wisconsin and Indiana, also to Missouri, Iowa. We have bordering states that treat businesses a lot more friendly, decently, properly than Illinois is doing. And for a lot of them, it's not very far to go over the border.
And how about the businesses that never came here in the first place? If you're deciding between, Indiana and Illinois, the decision never even gets made to come here in the first place simply because it's a hostile environment. And everybody knows that who's thoughtful.
Well, now you were saying something about a 9.5 unemployment. And I believe there are two factors. There's a U3 and a U6.
Absolutely.
And this is the U3 factor. This does not include all of the people that have been unemployed. Where do you think that is?
Nationally, it's somewhere around the 18% mark. And it's going to be higher here in Illinois.
Probably about 20% unemployment in Illinois.
Another important thing you can use as a gauge of how things are doing in Illinois is population. The thing that I've asked a bunch of times, everybody remembers Paul Simon, the senator, but he was the congressman from the 22nd district of Illinois before he became the senator. Where's the 22nd, the 21st, the 20th, and the 19th congressional districts now, just a few decades later? They're all in Texas because we've lost that much population.
And Texas is booming.
Of course.
I mean, that Governor Rick Perry is doing an outstanding job for job creation in Texas. And clearly that...
And also for education, because he's gotten his unions down there under control so that they aren't running the education system. And so Perry has done a lot of good down there. The guy's got guts to manage it.
Well, what do you think about the pension reform that we need here in Illinois and this unsubstantiated debt that we have?
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the big picture of a state that has too much debt, too many taxes, spends far too much, and the outcome is what we see. The outcome
also regulations.
Of course.
There was just a little squib in the paper the other day. This isn't major, but it shows you what's going on. There's three guys that started a little business of running kayaks for tourists and so on in the Chicago River. They expected to get started. The boating season kind of starts in April. The snow is mostly quit flying. And there's a lot of people that like kayaks and will go kayaking all kinds of places. They had a business they wanted to open. It took them from April until now to get a permit. Well, a complex business involving kayaks and, but they've ruined these guys. They've lost their whole major system, a season, when they should be getting going. Now they're left with their debts, and you can question, I don't mean to discourage them, but the facts are, it's going to be a hard climb out getting that business going with most of their best part of the season is gone from them.
I think we have a mutual friend. There's a couple of people who I think might be responsible for this information, but last election season, the vast majority of the Democrats running statewide were attorneys. whereas most of the people running on the Republican side were business owners.
Yeah.
And that's where some of that difference comes. Well, you're certainly somebody who knows what it takes to start and build a business. I've had the same much smaller experience.
There's also different kinds of attorneys. I'm a businessman, and I've been involved in designing, so I've used attorneys on patents and business, largely, entirely, in fact, ethical attorneys. What bothers me about it is that these ethical attorneys don't rise up in a rage against these creeps that are making so much trouble for everybody by suing everybody. They've ruined discipline in the schools, for instance. The parents dare not touch any little rascal that wants to make a scene. There ought to be some kind of kindly discipline permitted, but the attorneys have projected themselves into a money-making business, and they throw a lot of money into the Democrat Party.
There's a great story.
You find the bad attorneys over there. There's a lot more ethical attorneys than those bad ones. I don't know why they rise up against their scurrilous brothers.
There's a great story about how the legal environment of a situation can really affect a business. For decades, it became increasingly difficult for small aircraft producers, we talked about flying, to build new single-engine aircraft because Cessna, for example, could be sued for a seatbelt failure in an aircraft that had built 50 years before.
Yes.
And the costs of that litigation were rising to the point where essentially all single-engine aircraft production had stopped in this country. And then a federal law was passed that said that gave an 18-year statute of limitations after the production of the aircraft. So you couldn't sue an aircraft manufacturer for a failure in the airframe or the aircraft itself that occurred more than 18 years after the aircraft was built. And since then, we've had an amazing renaissance in single-engine aircraft. New companies and designs. It's been spectacular. So one of the things we
think of Burt Rutan, for gosh sakes.
That's right.
I'm an engineer. That guy is an engineer.
Right.
He's sending passengers up into space.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly.
Oh,
and one thing that we could do here in Illinois is pass some loser pay rules. If you bring a lawsuit against somebody and you lose, you ought to be prepared if it's a frivolous
Harry
suit
did
to
that
lose.
in Texas.
That's correct.
Go a little deeper into that. That sounds very interesting, like a good policy.
Well, doctors are certainly focused on medical malpractice, but every time I've spoken about medical malpractice, every business owner reminds me that the issue of tort reform applies across the board in the economy. And if a judge decides that a case that's been was brought frivolously, I think every fair person thinks that the person who brought it ought to pay for the court costs. And that's a disincentive for bringing a frivolous case. And I think that's the sort of thing we need to do in Illinois to turn us around from a judicial level.
How much does the insurance cost for a pediatrician in Illinois?
We're relatively inexpensive because everybody likes their pediatrician, so we don't get sued all that often. In my county, sort of the baseline cost through the insurance company we use is probably around $14,000 a year.
Is that all? I'm amazed.
On the other hand, I've got a good friend who's a neurosurgeon. It's a It's a 5 neurosurgeon practice in Lake County. And between the 5 of them, they pay $1.25 million a year in malpractice insurance.
Right off the top,
right off the top.
Before any profits
Correct.
are made.
And let's be straight. The reason that's the case is because they clearly get sued on a frivolous level. Every single solitary neurosurgeon gets sued on average every 18 months.
Wow.
They open the office every week. I did a little quick arithmetic there. For each one of those 5 guys, there's about $6,000 a week.
Right.
That's before they start paying for an office and a nurse and somebody to keep the books and everything else. Well, who the hell is paying for all those attorneys circling over this thing, trying to make fortunes, like this creep that ran as a Democrat, John, whatever his name, for president of the United States, and of course cheated on his wife as well.
Yes.
But
he had great hair, though.
He was one of those attorneys that was after class action suits.
Yep.
It is thought that raises the cost of medicine across the board pretty much by about 30%, because doctors are involved in protective
Sure. I had that
decisions.
experience. I mean, you brought up that, I mentioned that pediatricians don't get sued very often, but I've been to the courses given by the insurance company, and you walk away ordering more tests because they're trying to teach you how to avoid getting sued, and it just sinks into your
It just keeps
thought
getting
process.
more and more. And Dr. Friedman, you were a champion in speaking to Obamacare.
I was.
And you know what? When we come back after the break, we're going to be talking to Dr. Arie Friedman more. And Dr. Friedman is running for Senate District number 29 in Illinois.